Why House Baratheon is one of the strongest houses. If you think House Baratheon is just supposed to rush King's Landing and start attacking everybody, you're playing House Baratheon wrong. Because Baratheon's greatest advantage isn't their house cards. It isn't even their army. It isn't even King's Landing. It's the options Baratheon has to attack north, to attack south, or push west. Or they can sit comfortably in the center of Westeros and build an almost untouchable defensive position and stack power tokens, and wait for everybody else to destroy each other. Today, I'm breaking down exactly how to play House Baratheon in the Game of Thrones board game. Let's get into it. Baratheon's biggest advantage. If House Lannister starts the game with a slight disadvantage, then House Baratheon starts the game with a slight advantage, in my opinion, big. And the reason is, this advantage is the amount of options that are available to them. From this position, you got Lannister and Tyrell to the west. You got to the south, House Martell. You got to the north, House Stark, and even the Vale. And Baratheon doesn't necessarily have to commit to fighting any of them immediately. You can establish yourself around King's Landing and watch the board, and then attack whichever player gives you the best opportunity. That's incredibly powerful. But before we start talking about expansion, there's something Baratheon needs to establish first, and that's the Navy. Build the Baratheon Naval Fortress. So, it is one of your biggest priorities to get 3 ships into the Blackwater Bay, and at least 1 ship to stay in Shipbreaker Bay. Why? Because Blackwater Bay is arguably the heart of Baratheon's coastal defensive position. Ships there can support any troops. They can support Crackclaw Point, they can support King's Landing, they can support all 3 of these territories. And other enemies can't raid that fist of support. So Baratheon's coastal territories can become extremely difficult to attack. Sound like somebody? Then you got another ship sitting in Shipbreaker Bay. That ship can provide additional support. Or it can, place a raid order and raid Stark or Martell, depending on what's happening. But there's another reason attacking Baratheon, attacking their navy, attacking Baratheon's navy is so dangerous. 1 man, 1 card, Salladhor Saan. Read that card real quick. If somebody decides that they are going to sail into Baratheon waters, Saan is an incredible naval deterrent. If your opponent uses a support order from a sea area, Saan's abilities apply immediately, and suddenly the naval mathematics can completely change, bringing the enemy ship's strength to 0. That means Stark and Martell better think twice before attacking Baratheon. Once that naval fortress is established around this nice little island called Dragonstone and in King's Landing, Blackwater Bay, the land position becomes considerably safer. So, the next thing, taking King's Landing early. Let's talk about taking King's Landing. Baratheon should usually be looking to take King's Landing on the first turn. Obviously, it's a stronghold, and obviously it's going to move you up 1, towards 7 castles, of course. But there's another massive advantage in power. Baratheon has excellent early access to power tokens. Power tokens. So you place 1 crown there, you get 3. You get 2 crowns alone, like that. So you can start generating ridiculous amounts of power from your territories. 1, 2, 3, 4. And whenever the Game of Thrones Westeros card appears, and you have to bid on, the influence tracks, King's Landing and Kingswood can produce more after the bidding. So while other players are desperately trying to conserve their power, Baratheon can potentially build a massive stockpile of power tokens, once again, giving them an advantage on bidding on these tracks. This is very important when the Clash of Kings card is played. In the Clash of Kings card is when it's time to bid. So, this is one of my peeves. Don't throw away the Iron Throne token. Baratheon players do this a lot. They'll lose the Iron Throne position and then use that as a way to make Stannis Baratheon stronger in battle. If you are down on the Iron Throne track, he gains 5. That is not worth the trade-off. The Iron Throne token itself is extremely valuable to Baratheon. Just think about it. You've already got strong access to power tokens. You can potentially bid aggressively during the Clash of Kings card, where you bid, and maintain the Iron Throne and maybe even get other, tokens. By the way, you don't just go first, you also break ties. You can essentially combine power token wealth with control over the ties and deciding who's ahead of who. And that's a nasty combination. You can decide, let's say these two tie. You decide that. So don't just think about Stannis' combat ability. Think more about controlling the power structure here on Westeros. Sometimes political power is worth considerably more than just one lousy extra combat point of strength. Now, let's move on to Baratheon's house cards. So, let's talk about Baratheon's house cards. Overall, they're functional. They're not flexible like Lannister. They're not overpowered like Greyjoy. They're not atrocious like Stark. They're functional, but I wouldn't call the deck amazing. We've already talked about, Salladhor Saan. He's your naval deterrent. Then you've got Stannis and Renly Baratheon. Both abilities can be useful, but they're situational. Sometimes they're fantastic. Other times you're basically just playing them as blank combat strength cards. Not bad, right? Not bad. And then there's Sir Davos Seaworth. He's extremely useful if Stannis has been played. He gains an extra point. He becomes a 3 strength card. So if he's in the graveyard, he gets an extra, 3 points. So he's useful too. Brienne of Tarth and Melisandre are both solid situational cards. They're relatively weak, but situational. Somewhat. But then we get to my personal favorite, Patchface. And Patchface he might legitimately be the best 0 strength card there is. Just take a look at that. Why is Patchface so dangerous? Patchface is terrifying because your opponent really can't counter what you're trying to do with him. You can use him when you're winning. You can use him when you're losing. And sometimes you can deliberately sacrifice a battle just to destroy one of your opponent's most important house cards. So, for example, if I'm fighting House Martell and I don't really care about winning, I play Patchface, I lose Patchface, and that's fine because I want to remove a card like this. Or, if you're fighting House Lannister, you can remove Sir Gregor Clegane, the Giant. Or against House Stark, they play House Stark and they beat you, but then you can use Patchface to remove Roose Bolton from their hand. And you're essentially weakening that player's house card deck for the rest of the cycle. So, yeah, that's one of my favorite cards. That's why using Patchface relatively early, I like using him relatively early. don't wait forever trying to create the perfect situation. Sometimes it's just better to get rid of their most powerful card right away as soon as you can. So don't hesitate to use him. Also, identify the house card identify the house card that is most likely to cause problems for you, and just get rid of it. For example, I already told you Roose Bolton is a huge... If he dies, then House Stark gets to return all of their dead cards back to their hands. So Roose Bolton is definitely a good target. Anyway, once King's Landing is secure and your navy is established, you've got decisions to make. So this is probably about around the mid-game. This is where Baratheon becomes really fun. You don't necessarily follow the same strategy every game, because you can really try out different strategies, but just look at the board. Your first major opportunity will either be Storm's End or the Eyrie, and that's a good one. Let's start with the Eyrie. If Stark isn't concentrating their troops into the Vale, take advantage of that. You can potentially approach it through land, or just use your naval position to help move forces north. The Eyrie gives you another castle and helps expand your position without necessarily creating an immediate major war. But what if Stark is heavily defending the north? Then look south, attacking Martell. Normally, Martell is going to want Storm's End. But Martell also has another problem, Tyrell, which is often. If those two start fighting, that's your opportunity to move south. Maybe Martell has committed troops to the west, and maybe they're weakened. Storm's End, good target, and maybe they're concentrating their ships elsewhere. If Martell is using naval support from the Sea of Dorne, guess who can potentially ruin that plan? Good old Sally. So, let's just say once you've secured Storm's End, I like having a strong supporting force around the Kingswood. Why? Because Kingswood is incredibly useful geographically. Units there can help defend King's Landing using support, or they can support Storm's End and also defend that. And depending on the board situation, they can contribute further toward expansion. Particularly toward the Reach. One army, multiple possibilities. That's exactly how Baratheon wants to play. One army, multiple possibilities. Okay, now here's the next one. Attacking Lannister. There's another option people sometimes overlook. Harrenhal. You don't necessarily want to start a massive war with Lannister immediately. They're probably the last one. Instead, just wait, watch what happens between Lannister and Greyjoy, because you know they're always fighting. If Lannister makes a failed attack toward Crackclaw Point, that's an opportunity, because Lannister is heavily concentrated on defending Riverrun. That's another opportunity. If Greyjoy and Lannister are beating themselves to a bloody pulp, just beating each other bloody, that's definitely an opportunity. Move toward Harrenhal. And occasionally, something even better happens. Riverrun becomes more vulnerable. Probably more vulnerable to Greyjoy at least, but yeah, maybe Lannister just took it back, or maybe the armies are exhausted. Baratheon comes walking in, don't mind if I do. But I wouldn't build my entire strategy around holding Riverrun. This over here, in my opinion, is really just late game. You take it, you win, because sometimes the game continues. Yeah. Lannister, in my opinion, is an odd outcome. What is Baratheon's biggest weakness? Baratheon doesn't have many enormous weaknesses, but there is one thing you absolutely need to watch out for. Supply, specifically these barrels. Tyrell and Lannister can accumulate 5-6 barrels without anything particularly extraordinary. I mean, look. So, if supply, let's just say the supply card is drawn from the Westeros deck, that can end up hurting your expansion very badly. So that's another reason. That's another reason why you might want to expand towards the Vale. Because these Blackwater territories are important, but like, you need the castles, I get it, but you need the armies to defend them to be supported with, you need good supply. So if you can't support the armies to defend them, then yeah, you're going to have a hard time defending your territories. Here's a simple opening you guys can try. So, well, never mind. I'll go over the openings in shorts videos. But yeah, House Baratheon is the easiest house to play in my opinion. Don't neglect these barrels. Decide which way you want to go. Stack that economy. Definitely take King's Landing early. Make sure you have a naval fortress. Yeah, you have a very functional house card deck. Do not give this up whatsoever. Simple, safe, effective. It's hard to mess up with this house. If you lost as Baratheon or ended up coming in last place, I'd be kind of shocked. So that's House Baratheon. Ours is Fury. If you have any questions, please comment below.